Everyone thinks the viral clip is about my stepmother slapping me at my graduation party. They are wrong. The part that made the entire town gasp was not the slap. It was what my uncle showed them from his phone seconds later. Their perfect lives went up in flames. But to understand why he did it, you need to hear the start. My name is Erica Vega. I am 22 years old, and I am lying on a stretcher inside an ambulance. The world is reduced to this box. The smell of antiseptic and the metallic tang of my own blood. My graduation gown, a deep, academic violet that I was so proud of just hours ago, is bunched up around my waist. The collar, near my throat, is dark and sticky. The paramedic, a man with tired eyes and a name tag that just reads Jim, is gently probing my cheekbone. I flinch, a sharp intake of breath that hurts my ribs. Flashing lights, red and blue, slice through the darkness of the cabin, painting the ceiling in rhythmic, silent bursts of color. They are a stark contrast to the noise. The siren is a high, tearing wail that rips through the Colorado night, but inside, it feels muffled, distant. The only sound that feels close is the steady, tinny beep of the heart monitor they have clipped to my finger. "Who did this to you, kid?" The paramedic's voice is low, professional, but it holds zero patience for bullshit. He is not asking if I fell. He is asking who. He is holding a pen over a clipboard, his gaze steady on my face, waiting. I blink. The overhead light of the ambulance blurs, and the sound returns. Not the siren, the other sound, the sharp, wet crack of a hand striking skin, the sound of my mother's champagne flute, the expensive one, shattering on the patio flagstones, the sudden suffocating silence as the graduation party music cut off, the screams. My mind jumps back, pulled by the trauma. We were on the quad, just outside the main hall of Maple Ridge University, my graduation party, my celebration. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the white tents and the tables laden with food I had not touched. My stepmother, Valerie, was the picture of suburban perfection. She wore a beige sheath dress that probably cost $800. Her blonde hair was immaculate, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine about successful homemakers. She was smiling one moment, accepting compliments from a professor, and the next, her face was a mask of cold fury. She strode toward me, and before I could even register the shift, her hand came up. She did not slap me like in the movies. A dramatic swing. It was a short, brutal, open-palmed strike, delivered with the full force of her body. It connected with my cheek and the side of my head, and the world dissolved into bright white pain. I staggered back, my ears ringing, my brand-new bachelor's degree, clutched in my other hand, slipped from my fingers and fell onto the grass. Through the ringing, I heard my father, not, "Valerie, what the hell are you doing?" Not, "Erica, are you okay?" I heard Daniel Vega, my father, hiss at me, "Don't you dare embarrass this family, Erica." He was not looking at my bleeding lip. He was looking at the guests. I remember seeing them, our neighbors, my professors, Lily's friends, my few friends. Their faces were frozen in disbelief. Several people, almost instinctively, pulled out their cell phones, the little red recording lights blinking on. But in the corner of the patio, standing near the azalea bushes, my Uncle Marco was watching, my mother's brother. He was the only one not moving, not gasping. His eyes were dark, and his hand, I remember his hand, was clenched around his own phone. He raised his other hand, a quiet gesture, silencing the others. "No need," Marco's voice cut through the silence. "I got this." No one understood what he meant. They thought he was just stopping them from filming the family's dirty laundry. "Kid, Erica?" The paramedic's voice pulls me back to the ambulance. He's tapping my shoulder. "I need a name. Who hit you?" The pain is throbbing now, a deep, pulsing ache that starts in my cheek and radiates down to my jaw. I taste the copper again. I try to speak, but my lip is swelling fast. I manage a whisper, the words thick and heavy. It was my family. The paramedic's pen pauses over the clipboard. He looks at me, really looks at me, and his professional gaze sharpens. The practiced neutrality in his eyes hardens into something closer to pity, or perhaps just recognition. This changed the paperwork. This was not a random assault. Why? He asks, his voice even softer. They wanted the BMW, I whisper. He just nods. He understands. He has seen this script before. It is always about money. It is always about control. It is always violence disguised as family. The heart monitor, the steady tinny beep, suddenly speeds up. Beep, 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 beep. The paramedic glances at the machine, then back at me, his brow furrowing in concern. Just try to breathe slow, Erica. We're almost there. But I am not breathing slow. I am not in the ambulance anymore. I am back at the party, my face on fire, my father glaring, and my stepmother looking triumphant. I am remembering the exact moment my Uncle Marco stepped forward, past my father, past the broken glass. I remember him holding up his phone, the screen glowing with an obscene brightness in the twilight. He did not say a word. He just tapped the screen. And I remember the sound cutting out. I remember the silence that fell over the party. A silence so total, so absolute. It was louder than the slap. I remember Valerie's perfect, composed face cracking, the color draining from it, her mouth falling open. I remember my father's face turning from rage to a sick, gray ash. I close my eyes in the ambulance, the red and blue light still flashing against my eyelids. The pain in my cheek is real. It feels like the bone might be fractured, but underneath the pain, for the first time in my entire life, there is a cold, clear sliver of relief. Tonight, they put their hands on me. They drew my blood on the day I was supposed to be proudest. But for the first time, they do not control the story. It started when I was 9. My mother had been gone for almost a year. A year that felt like a gray fog, and my father announced we were moving. He was marrying Valerie. We moved to Oak Creek Estates, a neighborhood in the suburbs of Maple Ridge that prided itself on its perfect, manicured sameness. Every house was a 2-story colonial, painted in an approved, muted shade of beige, gray, or taupe. Every lawn was a perfect, weedless green carpet, cut to precisely 2 inches, shiny, black SUVs, always recently washed, sat in every driveway, to the outside world, to the neighbors who waved with polite, tight smiles. We were the new, model family, the successful executive, his elegant new wife, and the 2 lovely daughters. From the very first day, the roles were set in stone. Valerie had her own daughter, Lily, who was 3 years younger than me. Lily was the little angel. She was all blonde curls and bright, demanding eyes. I was introduced differently. I was the big sister, Erica. She's so mature for her age. I learned quickly that mature was a synonym for useful. I was never little Erica. I was never just Erica. I was a responsibility. And in turn, I was given responsibilities. I was the built-in, unpaid helper. When Valerie hosted her first dinner party for my father's colleagues, I remember the contrast so clearly. Lily, wearing a frilly pink dress, was paraded around, asked to show everyone her drawing of a princess. The guests would coo. "Oh, Daniel. She's brilliant. Such a bright future." Lily would beam and get a cookie. I was in a plain, dark blue dress. My job was to follow Valerie with the appetizer tray. When the guests took a bacon-wrapped scallop, they would smile at me. But the smile was different. It was an approving nod. "What a good helper you are, Erica," they would say. "Valerie, you've trained her so well." I was praised not for who I was, but for what I did. I was an efficient appliance. I tried, God, how I tried to win her over. I tried to earn a fraction of the affection she showered on Lily. I got straight A's. I kept my room spotless. I learned to do the laundry without being asked, folding the towels exactly the way Valerie liked them, with the seams hidden. When I brought home my first report card from the new school, all A's, I found Valerie in the kitchen, texting on her phone. I held it out to her, my chest tight with a pathetic, childish hope. She glanced up, took the envelope, and slid the card out. Her eyes scanned it for less than 5 seconds. "Good," she said, her thumb already moving back to her phone screen. "That's your responsibility." She placed the report card on the counter, underneath a stack of mail and a Williams-Sonoma catalog. Later that week, Lily brought home a finger painting of a brown blob. Valerie declared it a work of genius, framed it, and hung it in the breakfast nook. That first night in the new house set the tone for the next decade. My room was at the end of the hall. It was painted a pale, lifeless gray, a color Valerie had called sophisticated. It had been Lily's playroom, and she'd made it clear I was an intruder. I sat on the edge of the new, stiff mattress and looked at the gray walls, the gray carpet. I understood, in that deep, unspoken way a child understands things, that this was not my home. This was Valerie's house. It was Lily's house. I was just living here, on sufferance, as long as I remained mature. My father, Daniel, was a ghost in this new life. He was obsessed with his career, which was thriving, and with his new wife, who was beautiful and socially adept. He was so grateful to her for managing the house that he never looked closely at how it was being managed. He saw the polished floors and the quiet children and assumed it was Valerie's magic. He never saw that I was the one scrubbing those floors, that I was quiet because I had learned that my voice was an inconvenience. "Daniel, she's so good with Lily," Valerie would say at dinner, smiling at him. "A natural little mother," he would beam, pat my head, and say, "That's my girl, strong, reliable." He used my reliability as an excuse to look away. Valerie's control was never loud. She never screamed at me, not back then. Her weapons were soft, coded in the language of maternal concern. "Erica, honey, you're older," she would say, her voice a gentle murmur. "Lily is still so little, and she's sensitive. Just let her have the last brownie, okay? You understand. Erica, Lily's friends are coming over, and they want to use the den. You can just do your homework in your room, can't you? You're so good at being flexible. Erica, I know you wanted that blue sweater, but it looks so much cuter on Lily. You don't mind, do you? Blue isn't really your color anyway." It was 1,000 tiny cuts, a slow, steady erosion of my right to exist, to want, to take up space. I was the sacrificial sister. It was my job to give, and it was Lily's job to take. This was the unwritten law of the house. Holidays were the worst. Christmas morning, Lily would be buried in a mountain of presents. The newest electronics, designer clothes, ski equipment. I would sit on the edge of the scene, smiling until my face hurt, and I would receive practical gifts, a new set of notebooks for school, a sensible pair of winter boots. One year, when I was 12, my main gift was a pack of new dish sponges because Valerie said I kept forgetting to replace the old one. My father would watch, oblivious, and say, "See, Valerie thinks of everything. So practical." I stopped asking for things. I learned to shrink my dreams. When I was 14, I got an academic excellence award in biology. I was so proud. I loved science. I dreamed of being a marine biologist. I brought the plaque home, a small, heavy thing on a cheap wooden base. Valerie was in the living room, helping Lily practice a dance routine for a talent show. I stood in the doorway, holding the plaque. "Mom, I won," I started, but my voice wavered. I always called her Valerie in my head, but I had to call her Mom out loud. She looked over, annoyed at the interruption. "Won what, Erica?" I held up the plaque. "The District Science Award." "Oh," she said. She gave a small, tight smile. "That's nice. Put it on the kitchen counter. We're busy." She turned back to Lily. "And 5, 6, 7, 8, pivot." The next day, she spent 3 hours filming Lily's 2-minute dance routine, editing it, and uploading it to Facebook with a long, gushing caption about her future Broadway star. The plaque I won stayed on the kitchen counter for a week, collecting dust, until I quietly took it to my room and put it in the back of my closet, under my practical sweaters. I started a notebook, a cheap spiral-bound one I bought with my lunch money. I hid it under my mattress. In it, I wrote down the things I wanted. Not things, really, but futures. I want to see the ocean. I want to go to a college in California. I want to have a room that isn't gray. I never said those things out loud. In that house, "I want" was a forbidden phrase for me. Every time I had dared to use it, the answer was always the same. Now is not the time, Erica. Or worse, but Lily needs it more. By the time I was 14, the dynamics in the house had solidified. I was no longer a child. I was a junior administrator. Valerie, my stepmother, had fully embraced her role as a prominent figure in Oak Creek Estates. Her days were filled with crucial networking meetings, chairing the Parent-Teacher Association's fundraising gala, and managing the neighborhood's social calendar. Her image as the perfectly competent, involved modern wife was her primary occupation. This left the actual running of the house to me. The transition was gradual, a slow avalanche of delegated tasks. It started with, "Erica, honey, you're almost 15. You can handle dinner tonight, right? I have a vital planning session. Soon." Tonight became every night. I was responsible for meal planning, grocery lists, and cooking. I became the house laundress, because Valerie could not stand the smell of bleach. When I turned 16 and got my driver's license, I officially became Lily's personal chauffeur. Ballet at 4, soccer practice at 5:30, a friend's house at 7. My father, Daniel, was worse than useless. He was an enabler. He saw my exhaustion and repackaged it as virtue. "Look at her, Val," he would boom at dinner, while I served the pasta I had cooked after driving Lily to 2 different suburbs. "She is so strong, so reliable. I don't know what we would do without her." He used my strength as a shield, a justification for his own profound neglect. He loved to call me reliable because it meant he did not have to be. My reliability was his permission slip to check out, to focus on his career, his marriage, and his golf game. He never questioned why his teenage daughter was running a household. He just praised the results and took another serving. My escape plan began to form. I knew I had to get to college, and I knew it had to be far away. To do that, I needed money. I applied for a job at the Cedar Cup, a small coffee shop in the old part of town, far from the polished, judgmental eyes of Oak Creek. I told them it was for work experience. They thought it was admirable. "What wonderful initiative, Erica," Valerie said, sipping her wine. "It will look great on your college applications." My father nodded. "That's my girl, always responsible." The support lasted exactly as long as it took for them to realize I had my own income. The first family emergency happened 2 weeks after my first paycheck. The washing machine died. Valerie sighed with the weight of the world on her shoulders. "The repairman is quoting $400. Daniel, it's just awful timing, with the club dues this month." A familiar. Heavy silence settled over the dinner table. Daniel looked stressed. Valerie looked martyred. And then, as one, both of their gazes landed on me. "Well," Daniel started, clearing his throat. "Erica's working now. You've got that coffee shop money. Right. Honey, maybe you could pitch in? Just to help the family out. We'll pay you back, of course, first of the next month." I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew first of next month was a date that would never arrive. But I was 16. I was trapped. Saying no meant I was the selfish, ungrateful child they always painted me as when I failed to be useful. I went upstairs to my room, took the 4 crisp $100 bills from the envelope, and brought them down. "Oh, thank you, baby," Valerie said, her relief immediate. "You're a lifesaver." I had just become their emergency fund. The temporary loans became a ritual. My paycheck, which I earned steaming milk and wiping counters, was no longer my own. It was $200 for my father's new golf driver, It was $350 for the non-refundable deposit on Lily's prom dress, a dress she wore for 3 hours before complaining that someone else had a similar color. The promise was always the same. "We'll pay you back." It was a dull, flimsy lie, and the fact they did not even bother to make it believable was the real insult. I was not a daughter. I was a walking, talking, interest-free line of credit. I was a flexible extension of their household budget, and my future was the collateral. While I was being financially bled, my role as Lily's shadow servant was cemented. Valerie had instilled in her a profound sense of entitlement. A good big sister is always there when you need her. Valerie would say, in our house, need meant want. Lily, who was lazy in a way that had been cultivated into an art form, took this to heart. "Erica," she would call from the living room, while I was trying to study for my calculus midterm. "My history paper is due tomorrow, and I just don't get it. I can help you outline it after I finish this chapter." I'd call back. She would appear in my doorway, pouting. "No, you're so much better at writing. It's easy for you. Can't you just write the introduction and conclusion? I'll do the middle part." It started with introductions. It became entire essays. It culminated in her sophomore year science project, a model of a volcano that I built in the garage at 2 a.m, using vinegar and baking soda, while she was at a sleepover. She got a B+ on it and complained that I had not made the lava look realistic enough. I was living a double, then triple life. I was a straight A, 4.0 GPA honor student. I was a part-time barista working 20 hours a week, and I was an unpaid domestic servant and tutor. But in the family narrative, only Lily's efforts were celebrated. My achievements were simply the expected baseline. Her C average was showing so much improvement. My spot on the honor roll was just what Erica does. There was one person who saw through the facade. My mother's brother, Uncle Marco. Marco was the antithesis of Oak Creek Estates. He was an ex-cop who'd left the force years ago and now worked a mix of freelance IT security and night shift guard duty. He lived in a small, third-floor walk-up apartment in the city, the kind with radiators that hissed and floors that creaked. Valerie detested him. "He's not a good influence, Erica," she'd say. "And that neighborhood is not safe." Which is precisely why I went. Once every few months, I would lie and say I was at the library, and I would take the bus downtown. I remember one visit clearly. I was 17. I was stressed, exhausted, and trying to calculate how many extra shifts I'd need to cover my college application fees. Marco ordered a large pepperoni pizza, and we sat on his worn-out leather sofa, which smelled faintly of old books and coffee. He did not waste time with pleasantries. He never asked. "How's the family?" he asked. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I said. The automatic, deflective response. Marco just looked at me. He had a way of looking at you, a holdover from his cop days. That felt like an X-ray. He saw every lie. "No, you're not," he said. Not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "So what's the plan, kid? How are you getting out?" The word out hung in the air. It was so direct, so validating, that it shocked me. "I'm applying to colleges," I said, my voice quiet. "I'm saving up from the Cedar Cup." "How much of that are you actually keeping?" he asked. I stared at him, my throat tightening. "How did you know?" "Because I know your father," Marco said, his voice flat and hard. "And I know his new wife. They're users. They see you, and they see a tool. They see a capable big sister, which is just a polite way of saying the servant." I had never heard anyone name it before. I had never allowed myself to form the words, even in my own head. Hearing him say it, so bluntly, cracked the dam. I started to cry, not the dramatic sobs of a child, but the silent, hot, exhausted tears of a person who has been holding her breath for a decade. Marco did not pat my back or offer platitudes. He just handed me a napkin and waited for me to finish. He saw the control. He understood the kind of abuse that does not leave physical bruises but hollows you out from the inside. That conversation was a catalyst. I stopped just surviving. I started planning. I went to the library and researched scholarships. I started hoarding my tips in a small, tin box shaped like a boot, hiding it under a loose floorboard in my closet. I opened a new bank account at a credit union downtown, one Marco recommended, and started diverting a small, secret portion of my paycheck there. My dreams of college were the only thing they could not touch, though not for lack of trying. I was looking at the marine biology program at UC San Diego. I said tentatively at dinner one night. Valerie scoffed without looking up from her tablet. California? Don't be ridiculous. Erica, that's thousands of miles away. It's completely impractical. But they have one of the best programs. And your family is here, she cut in, her voice taking on that sickly sweet tone she used for manipulation. Lily will be starting college herself in a few years, and she'll need your guidance. What's wrong with the community college here in Maple Ridge? You can live at home, keep your job, and help out. It's the best of both worlds. Her best of both worlds. I thought I would be her permanent, low-cost domestic help, forever. The hypocrisy was staggering. The very next weekend, Valerie and Daniel flew Lily to Boston for a college tour weekend. They visited Harvard, Yale, and Brown. Lily, whose grades were mediocre at best, posed for pictures under ivy-covered archways, which Valerie promptly posted all over social media. The captions were filled with hashtags about my brilliant girl and future doctor or future lawyer, depending on the week. They were spending thousands of dollars to tour campuses Lily had no chance of getting into, investing in the image of her success. Meanwhile, I, the honors student, was being told to aim for community college. I sat in my gray room, looking at the travel brochures I had hidden under my mattress. I finally understood. I was not a daughter, I was an asset, and they had no intention of letting me leave. My maternal grandfather, Miguel Vega, was the only person in my life who saw me as a whole person, not just a set of useful functions. He smelled of Old Spice and sawdust, and he was the only one who ever asked me about the dreams I wrote in my hidden notebook. He passed away when I was 16, a sudden heart attack that took the last bit of unconditional warmth from my world. His absence was a hollow ache that never really went away. 2 years later, I was 18. It was spring of my senior year of high school. The thick envelopes of college acceptances had started to arrive. Small victories. I celebrated in the privacy of my gray room. Then, a different kind of letter came. It was not thick, but it was heavy, made of expensive, creamy cardstock. The return address was not a university, but a law firm, Horizon and Cole, attorneys at law. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought I was in some kind of trouble. I hid the letter under my shirt and waited until 3 p.m, when I knew Valerie would be at her yoga class and Lily would be at the mall. I locked my bedroom door and sat on the floor, my back against the wall. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was dense with legal language. Whereas, and hereby, and testament. I had to read it 3 times before the words swam into focus and the meaning punched the air from my lungs. My grandfather, Miguel, had not left me his old truck or his toolbox. He had left me a future. He had established a trust fund in my name. The letter specified the amount, a sum that made me feel dizzy, more than enough to cover 4 years of tuition at any university I chose, with a significant amount left over to help me start my own life. But it was the next paragraph that made me stop breathing. It was a single, beautiful, ironclad sentence. The funds were for the sole use and under the exclusive control of my granddaughter, Erica Vega, upon her 18th birthday or her graduation from high school, whichever comes first. It went on. No parent, guardian, or relative shall have any access to, or control over, the dispersal of these funds. He had seen them, from wherever he was. He had seen them. He had seen Valerie's greed and my father's weakness. He had seen how they used me. This trust was not just money. It was a shield. It was a key. It was my grandfather reaching through time to hand me an escape route, The wave of gratitude was so profound, so overwhelming, it almost choked me. I cried, my face pressed into my knees, silent sobs for the man who had loved me enough to protect me even after he was gone. And then, a second wave hit me, just as powerful, but icy cold. Fear. I knew, with absolute, chilling certainty, what would happen when they found out. I knew their smiles, their logic, their family-first manipulations. They would not see this as my freedom. They would see it as a family resource they had just been denied. They would see it as a threat. My first call was not to the bank, it was to the law firm. I used a burner phone I had bought with my hoarded tips from the Cedar Cup, a precaution Uncle Marco had drilled into me. I made an appointment, lying to my family that I was meeting a study group. The next day, I was sitting in a high-backed leather chair opposite Mrs. Caroline Cole. She was an older woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back in a severe bun. She did not smile, but she was not unkind. She radiated a calm, expensive competence. "Miss Vega," she said, adjusting her glasses, "your grandfather was a very wise man. He was also very specific." She walked me through the trust, explaining the terms. The protections were as strong as she could legally make them. The money was in a firewalled account. I, and only I, could access it. "You do not need a co-signer," she said, her eyes fixed on mine. "You do not need anyone's permission. Do you understand?" I nodded, my hands clenched in my lap. They're going to want me to sign it over to them." Caroline Cole's expression did not change, but I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She had seen this before. "Let me be unequivocal," she said, leaning forward. "You will be under no legal obligation to do so. If you sign any document attempting to transfer that control, you will be doing so against the explicit documented wishes of your grandfather and against my strong legal advice." She watched me for a moment, saw the fear that was still radiating off me, the fear of a teenager who knew what family pressure really meant. She reached into a drawer and pulled out 2 thin pamphlets. She slid them across the polished mahogany desk. The titles were stark. One said, "Financial Abuse, Recognizing the Signs." The other, "Coercion versus Concern, How Families Exert Undue Control." I stared at them. They were not legal documents. They were lifelines. "Your grandfather," she said quietly, "wanted you to be safe. That is what this trust is for. Read these, and if you feel you are being pressured, you call me immediately. That is what I am for." I left the office with the pamphlets hidden in my backpack and a new, terrified resolve. I knew I could not hide this alone. That night, I went to Marco's apartment. I did not even sit down. I just pulled the letter from my bag and handed it to him. He read it, his face impassive. He read it a second time, and a muscle in his jaw twitched. He looked up, and his eyes were not warm and comforting. They were cold. They were the eyes of the cop he used to be. "Well, kid," he said, his voice a low growl. "This is it. This is your ticket out." He handed the letter back. "Now, you listen to me. You guard this. You tell no one. Not your father, and especially not that woman. They will not ask you for this money. Erica. They will demand it. They will guilt you. They will threaten you. They will make your life a living hell until they get their hands on it." "I know," I whispered. "No, you don't," he said, his voice sharp. "Not really. You've only seen the polite version. This is real money now. This is a game changer. They're going to lose their minds." He was right, and we did not even have to wait long. The secret held for exactly 1 week. Then, the inevitable happened. The law firm sent a certified letter to my father's office. It was a standard notification, a legal courtesy, informing him, as my listed guardian at the time the trust was created, that the terms of the trust had been executed and control had been passed to me, the sole beneficiary. My father came home that night at 6:30. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of marinara sauce, the smell of oregano filling the air. Valerie was at the counter, sorting the mail. Daniel walked in. and the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. He was holding the letter from Horizon and Cole. He did not look angry. He looked stunned. "Val," he said, holding out the paper. "You need to read this." Valerie took it, her brow furrowed in annoyance. She read it. Her manicured hands tightened on the paper. Then she looked up, first at Daniel, then at me. And she smiled. It was the brightest, widest, most terrifying smile I had ever seen. "Oh my goodness!" she shrieked, a high false sound of pure delight. She rushed over and grabbed me in a hug that felt like a vice. Erica, honey, this is a miracle. God has truly blessed this family." She pulled back, her hands gripping my shoulders, her eyes shining with a frightening intensity. "Daniel, did you see the amount? We're saved. All that stress about Lily's tuition, the new roof. Erica, your grandfather was a saint." My father was nodding, a slow, dazed look on his face. This changes everything," he murmured. I stood frozen, the wooden spoon dripping sauce onto the floor. It's my trust," I managed to say, my voice barely a squeak. "Of course it is, sweetie," Valerie trilled, patting my cheek. "It's all yours, and we, as your family, will help you manage it. You're so young. You can't be expected to handle that kind of money. Your father, he'll invest it. We'll make it grow. For all of us." There it was. Us. We. Family. The very next day, the sugar-coated suggestions began. "You know, Erica," Valerie said, sitting next to me on the sofa, her voice warm and conspiratorial, "your grandfather obviously meant this for the whole family. He loved us all. He just put your name on it for legal reasons." I just stared at her. "And now that we have this wonderful opportunity," she continued, "I think our first priority should be securing Lily's future. You know how badly she wants to go to medical school. The tuition is just astronomical. This money, it's a sign. It's meant to help her achieve her dream. You'd want that for your sister, wouldn't you?" I listened to her weave this new reality. A reality where my escape fund was now Lily's tuition fund. I saw the logic twisting, the sacrifice card being polished and prepared for play. This was not a celebration, it was an acquisition, and I was the only thing standing in their way. I looked at the woman who had made my life a gray, serviceable hell, now beaming at me as if I were her dearest prize, and I knew, with a sinking, cold certainty, that the war had just begun. But for the first time in my life, I was not just holding a wooden spoon, I was holding a shield, and they had no idea how strong it was. The sweet, cloying facade of family joy lasted less than 48 hours. The celebration was over. The negotiation had begun. They called it a family meeting. This was a term Valerie used whenever she wanted to issue a decree. It was held in the formal dining room, a cold space with a heavy mahogany table that was only ever used for Thanksgiving and for show. It was a Sunday afternoon. The light coming through the blinds cut the room into stripes. I sat on one side, my father, Valerie, and Lily sat on the other, a panel of judges. My father, Daniel, cleared his throat, the sound overly loud in the quiet room. He slid a thick stack of papers across the polished wood. They stopped in front of me. "Erica," he began, his voice laced with a false, booming heartiness. "Your mother and I have been talking, and, well, we've had our lawyer, Tom, draft up some simple paperwork." "It's nothing, honey, really," Valerie chimed in, leaning forward. Her hands were clasped, her face a mask of serene helpfulness. "It's just that a trust of this size, it's a huge responsibility. Taxes, investments, market fluctuations. It's terribly complicated. You're so young. We just want to help you protect it." I looked down at the top page. The title was stark: Durable Power of Attorney and Appointment of Trustee. "This just gives your father permission to manage the funds on your behalf," Valerie continued, her voice as smooth as silk. "The money is still 100% yours, of course. This just lets him do the heavy lifting, make the investments, so you don't have to worry about a thing." I'm an expert at this, Erica, my father added, puffing his chest slightly. I handle multi-million-dollar accounts at work. This is what I do. I can make this money grow, really grow, for your future, for the family's future. I picked up the stack. It was at least 20 pages long, stapled in the corner. I started to read the first page, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. Valerie let out a small, indulgent laugh. Oh, honey, you don't have to read all that. It's just standard boilerplate. Tom faxed it over. We just need your signature on the last page. I want to read it, I said, my voice quiet. I played naive. I used the maturity they had always forced on me, but in a new way, I asked stupid questions. What does this clause mean? Full and unrestricted power? That just means I can move the money around, Daniel said quickly, to get the best returns. And this part? I asked, pointing. Including the power to disperse funds for the health, education, maintenance, and support of the beneficiary or the beneficiary's immediate family. There it was, the poison pill, buried on page 3. That's just in case, honey, Valerie said, her smile not wavering, though her eyes had gone cold. In case of an emergency, for any of us. Like Lily needing a car for school? I asked, my voice still light. Lily, who had been texting under the table, looked up. I do need a car, she whined. How am I supposed to get to my pre-med classes? You can't be selfish about this, Erica. No one is being selfish, Lily, Daniel snapped, glaring at me. Erica just needs to sign the papers so we can manage this as a family. I continued to read. Slowly, line by line, I could feel the tension in the room stretching taut, like a piano wire. Every second I spent reading was an act of defiance. The more I read, the clearer it became. This was not a helping document. This was an abdication. It gave my father the right to do whatever he wanted with my money, including gifting it to himself or Lily, with no oversight. Finally, after what felt like an hour, I placed the papers back on the table. This is a lot to take in, I said, meeting my father's gaze. Mrs. Cole, the lawyer, said I should never sign anything without her reviewing it first. I need to take this to her. The explosion was immediate. Daniel's fist hit the table, making the water glasses jump. Mrs. Cole, he roared. Who the hell is Mrs. Cole? I am your father. Are you telling me you trust some stranger over your own family? Daniel, calm down, Valerie said, placing a hand on his arm, but her own voice was sharp. No, I will not calm down, he shouted, his face turning a blotchy red. You're accusing me, Erica. After everything I've done for you, you're accusing me of trying to steal from you. Is that it? This was the first move. Guilt. I'm not accusing anyone, I said, my heart hammering. I just want my lawyer to read it. She's not your lawyer, Erica. Valerie cut in, her voice suddenly dripping with pity. She's the executor's lawyer. We are your family, and honestly, I'm deeply hurt that you would react this way. And here was the second move, emotional blackmail. Valerie stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. She put a hand to her chest. These last few days, since we found out, I haven't slept. I have been so worried about protecting you, worried about making the right decisions for this family, for Lily's future. I'm under so much stress, trying to keep everything together. She turned, and her eyes were glistening with manufactured tears. And now you do this. You treat us like criminals, just because we're trying to help. I don't know what we did to deserve this from you. She was good. She was a professional. She had framed my reasonable caution as a cruel, personal attack. Erica, just sign the paper, Lily whined, her voice cracking. Why are you making Mom cry? It's not like you even need all that money. You're smart. You get scholarships. I'm the one who needs to go to med school, and that's way more expensive. You're supposed to be my big sister. You're supposed to help me. The three-pronged attack, my father's rage, my stepmother's tears, My stepsister's entitlement. I was surrounded. I looked at their faces. A tribunal of greed disguised as concern. The old Erica, the 9-year-old Erica, would have caved. She would have apologized, signed the paper, and spent the rest of her life paying for that one moment of weakness. But I was 18, and I had Caroline Cole's pamphlets in my bag. So I did something I had never done before. I said nothing. I just sat there, silent. I did not apologize. I did not defend myself. I did not argue. I just met their glares with a quiet, blank stare. My silence was a wall. It was a no they could not grab onto, could not twist. The silence unnerved them. They were used to my apologies, my justifications, my attempts to please. "Fine," Daniel finally snarled, grabbing the papers from the table. "Be that way. Be the ungrateful, selfish child. But this conversation is not over." It was not. The family meeting was just the opening salvo. The real war began in the following days. The passive aggression became a suffocating fog. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. I was 5 minutes late from my shift at the Cedar Cup. "Must be nice to be so casual with your time," Daniel muttered, "while the rest of us are here, worrying about family finances." I cooked dinner, the same meal I had cooked a dozen times. "It's a little bland, isn't it?" Valerie said, pushing her food around the plate. "I guess your mind is on other, more important things now." "I forgot to buy milk." "It's a simple request, Erica," Daniel said, his voice dripping with disappointment. "But I guess we can't rely on you anymore. You've made it very clear that you're only out for yourself." They were building a case against me. Every minor infraction was filed away as proof of my new, money-corrupted, ungrateful nature. Then, Valerie escalated. She launched a smear campaign. She started with our relatives. I overheard her on the phone with my aunt. Her voice choked with fake tears. "I just don't know what to do. Sarah," she wept. "We're so worried about her. She's changed. This money. She's become so secretive, so cold. She's fallen in with some bad influences. I think she talks about lawyers. She won't listen to her father. She wants to keep all the money for herself. And she knows. She knows what Lily needs for medical school. I'm just terrified for her. She painted me as a cold-hearted, brainwashed dragon, hoarding a pile of gold while my family suffered." It was during this phase that Uncle Marco came for dinner. It was a Thursday. The tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Valerie was in the middle of a monologue about the sacrifices parents make, her eyes fixed on me. Lily was complaining about her old laptop. Daniel was pointedly ignoring me. Marco just ate his food, listening. He heard Valerie sigh. "Well, some children are just born selfish, I suppose." He heard Daniel agree. "It's the ingratitude that kills you." Marco did not say a word. He did not defend me. He just drank his water, and as he set the glass down, his eyes met mine across the table. It was a brief look, less than a second, but it was enough. It was a look of pure, unadulterated confirmation. "I see it. I hear it. I believe you." I felt a small, hard knot of resolve in my stomach. I was not crazy. I was not the selfish one. Later that night, long after he had left, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Marco. "Don't you dare sign a single thing. This is exactly what I warned you about. They're escalating. If they ramp this up, I'm with you 100%. But we need proof. Real, hard proof." Proof. The word echoed in my head. I had been in a purely defensive crouch my entire life. His text flipped a switch. The next afternoon, I went to an electronics store in the next town over. I used the cash from my secret bank account. I bought a tiny digital voice recorder, the kind students use for lectures. That evening, I went downstairs for dinner. I turned the recorder on and slipped it into the pocket of my jeans. "We need to talk about the papers. Erica," my father started, his voice already heavy with menace. "Your little silent treatment is over." "I'm not signing them," I said. The fight that followed was one of the worst yet, but this time, as they yelled, as they threatened, as Valerie wept her crocodile tears, and my father called me a disgrace, a small, cold part of me was perfectly calm. I was not just a victim anymore, I was a witness, and I had a record. The voice recorder felt like a small, cold stone in my pocket. It was a tangible secret. The first recording I captured, the one of my father telling me I was a disgrace and a leech, despite the fact they were trying to take my money, was ugly and raw. I took it to Marco's apartment the next day. He listened to it, his face grim, and then he transitioned from supportive uncle to field handler. "Okay," he said, turning the recorder over in his hands. "This is a good start, but this is your life, Erica, not a TV show. We have to be smart. You're building a legal case, even if you do not know it yet." He laid out the rules, his ex-cop voice cutting through my fear. Rule 1. You never, ever let them know you're recording. Not a hint. If they find out, they'll stop talking, or worse, they'll find your evidence. He pulled a small, heavy-duty encrypted USB drive from a drawer. Rule 2. Backups. And backups of your backups. Evidence has a way of disappearing. Laptops get stolen. Phones get lost. From now on, every recording you make, every text you save, you upload it to a new, secure cloud account that only you and I have the password to, and you give me a hard copy for this drive. I'll keep it in a safe deposit box. They can't touch what they can't find. I told him about the secret account I had already opened at the Central City Credit Union, the one downtown, far from the bank Valerie and Daniel used. "Good," he said, nodding. "That's your bug-out bag. Keep it funded. Keep it quiet. That's your escape money." My next move was legal. I called Caroline Cole's office again. I brought her the 20-page power of attorney document my father had tried to force me to sign. She read it in her silent, mahogany-paneled office. Her expression remained neutral, but her grip on the papers tightened until her knuckles were white. When she finished, she set the packet down, perfectly aligned with the edge of her desk. "Miss Vega," she said, her voice quiet but furious, "this is not help. This is a hostile, predatory, and frankly, poorly drafted attempt to seize your assets. The clause on page 3 alone is grounds for a restraining order. They are not asking to manage your trust. They are asking for a blank check to steal it." She made a copy of the packet for her own files. Then, she opened a folder on her desk. "Your grandfather anticipated this kind of pressure," she said. "Now, we put the next phase of his plan in motion." She explained that she would immediately set up the mechanics of the trust. First, she would pay my university tuition. I had decided on Redstone State, the local university they thought I was attending out of obedience, directly. The tuition bill would never even come to the house. Second, the remainder of the funds designated for my living expenses would be deposited, per my instruction, in a monthly stipend. "Which account would you like that sent to?" she asked. I gave her the routing and account numbers for my secret credit union account. She typed it into her system. "Excellent. Daniel and Valerie will have no access to, or knowledge of, this cash flow. It is completely insulated from them." She then tapped a specific clause in the original trust document. "There is one more thing," she said. "Your grandfather included a hardship and duress provision. If you ever feel that your physical safety or mental well-being is threatened to the point where you must leave your residence, I am authorized to immediately release an emergency disbursement. This would cover a security deposit, first and last month's rent on a new apartment, moving costs, and a living stipend for 90 days. It is a one-time use escape hatch. Erica, it is here if you need it." I left her office feeling like I was wearing armor. The threats, as Marco predicted, escalated. When my father realized I was not just thinking about it, but actively refusing to sign, the cold, passive aggression turned hot, but they were sloppy. Valerie, in her rage, started leaving a paper trail. I came home one night, and my bedroom door was locked. From the inside, Lily was in there. I knocked. Lily, I need to study. She shouted through the door. Mom said I could use your desk. Mine is too cluttered. I went downstairs. Valerie was in the kitchen, reading a magazine. Why is Lily in my room? Valerie didn't look up. She needed a quiet place. You've been so hostile lately. You're upsetting her. So I'm just not allowed in my own room? Valerie finally lowered the magazine. Her eyes were hard. This is my house, Erica. You are living here, eating my food, under my protection. A grateful daughter would be contributing to the family. A grateful daughter would be helping her sister. If you are not going to be a part of this family, then you shouldn't expect the privileges that come with it. Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from her. I am incredibly disappointed in your selfish behavior. Your father and I are trying to protect you, and you are treating us like the enemy. If you will not sign those papers to help this family, you should not expect this family to have a place for you. You are making a terrible, terrible mistake. I screenshot it. I uploaded it to the cloud. I forwarded it to Marco. 2 days later, Marco came over. He said he was there to fix the router. Valerie and Daniel were at a fundraiser. I let him in. He was carrying a toolbox. Where's the main battlefield? He asked. The kitchen, I said instantly. It's always the kitchen. Good. He walked in, looked around, and then tapped the wooden paper towel holder on the counter. This is perfect. It's central. He opened his toolbox. He took out a tiny black square, no bigger than a sugar cube. It was a high-definition mini camera with a motion sensor and a pinhole lens. He worked quickly, his hands sure and practiced. He drilled a microscopic hole in the wood grain, mounted the camera inside, and fed the wire to a tiny battery pack hidden in the base. It was invisible. It records on motion, he said, wiping the counter of any dust. It'll catch anything that happens in this room. The audio is crystal clear. I'll come by once a week to check the Wi-Fi and swap the memory card. You are consenting to this, correct? For your own protection? Yes, I said, my voice firm. Absolutely, yes. We were building an arsenal. With my legal and financial flanks secured, I started working on the rest of my escape. I went to Redstone State University, not as a prospective student, but as an enrolled one. I made an appointment with a student wellness counselor, a woman named Mrs. Albright. I sat in her comfortable, plant-filled office, and I told her a carefully edited version of the story. I'm under a lot of stress at home, I began. My family is not happy that I have a trust fund for college. They want to control it, and I won't let them. They're making things very difficult. I was expecting a pamphlet on managing stress. Instead, Mrs. Albright leaned forward, her face full of serious, focused concern. Erica, she said, her voice gentle but firm. What you are describing is not family stress or strict parenting. The words you are looking for are financial abuse and coercive control. What they are doing is a recognized form of domestic abuse. Hearing her say it, a professional, an outsider, made me feel validated in a way I had never known. I was not crazy. I was not the bad guy. You are 18, she continued. You are a legal adult. You have rights. She opened her desk drawer and gave me 2 more cards. One was for the university's Student Legal Aid Service. The other was for the Maple Ridge Domestic Wellness Center. They offer free counseling and can help you create a safety plan for when you decide to leave. Not if. I walked out of her office with my head held high. I was no longer just Erica, the family servant. I was Erica, a legal adult with a trust fund, a lawyer, a private investigator, and a university support system. The last piece of the puzzle was me. I had to unlearn a lifetime of obedience. I started practicing in the mirror in my gray room. I practiced saying the word that had always been forbidden to me. No. I said it to my reflection. No, I will not be signing that. No, that is not your money. No, I will not be paying for Lily's car. No, I am not having this discussion. I practiced answering without apologizing. I practiced holding my ground without crying. I was retraining myself. shedding the skin of the mature, reliable daughter and finding the person underneath. I also started looking at apartments, online, late at night. I would browse listings for small, clean, one-bedroom apartments near the university. The stipend from the trust would cover it easily. I was planning my exit. Graduation day was my D-Day. I told Marco about the plan. I told him about the camera footage we were collecting. My father throwing a magazine at the wall. Valerie telling me I was worthless if I couldn't do this one thing for them. Marco listened, and then he gave me the final piece of the strategy. "The evidence is great, kid," he said. "It's ironclad for a courtroom, but people like Daniel and Valerie, they don't fear a judge as much as they fear their neighbors. They live and die by their image. Their reputation in Oak Creek is everything. A restraining order is one thing. Public humiliation is another." He leaned in. "You want this to stop? Permanently? Don't just take them to court. Let them expose themselves. In public, in front of all the people they're trying to impress. Let them tear down their own facade. You just have to give them the stage." I did not know how we would ever manage that. And then, 2 weeks later, Valerie gave it to us. She announced it at dinner, her voice bright with a terrifying, brittle enthusiasm. "I have the most wonderful idea. Erica, you've worked so hard, and we are so proud of you graduating from Redstone. I am going to throw you the most beautiful graduation party. Right here, in the backyard. We'll invite all our friends, all the neighbors, your professors. We have to show everyone how much we support you, how much this family celebrates its successes." She was beaming, already picturing the Instagram posts, the perfect family, the proud parents. I looked across the table, my face a mask of polite gratitude, but inside, my heart was beating a cold, steady, tactical rhythm. A party, a stage, a public setting. Valerie was not planning a celebration. She was planning an ambush. She was building a theater of public opinion, intending to paint me as the loving, generous daughter who was finally doing the right thing for her family. She had no idea that I was planning to do the exact same thing. She was handing me the weapon. The morning of my graduation was heavy and still. The air in the house was buzzing, not with genuine joy, but with the brittle, high-strung energy of a performance. I stood in my gray bedroom, a room I knew I would be leaving within 24 hours, and looked at the graduation gown laid out on my bed. It was a deep, rich violet, the color of a fresh bruise. I zipped it up. It felt less like a robe of achievement and more like armor. I checked my preparations one last time. Tucked into the deep inner pocket, hidden by the heavy satin facing, were my real defenses. First, a folded, crisp copy of the trust agreement from my grandfather, Miguel Vega. Second, the small, encrypted USB drive Marco had provided. It was now loaded with 3 weeks of carefully curated evidence. There were the audio files of my father's threats. There were the screenshots of Valerie's manipulative text messages. And there was the crown jewel, nearly 20 minutes of high-definition video from the kitchen camera, capturing every lie, every moment of coercion, every time Valerie said the trust was family money and that I was worthless if I didn't hand it over. The USB felt impossibly small in my palm, but it was the heaviest thing I had ever held. Downstairs, the show had already begun. Valerie was a whirlwind of expensive perfume and sharp commands. She was wearing a stark white sheath dress, fitted perfectly, and her pearls. It was not an outfit for a mother celebrating her daughter. It was an outfit for a hostess accepting an award. She kept checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting the mask of the proud, successful mom, practicing the smile that would look so good on Instagram. My father was in the kitchen, already on his second cup of coffee, speaking loudly into his phone, presumably to one of his brothers. "Yeah, she's a sharp kid." Daniel was booming, his voice full of false heartiness. "We're really proud. Oh, absolutely. And we're finally in a position to get Lily that new car she needs for her pre-med track. Just sorting out the financing." He caught my eye as I walked in and gave me a grotesque wink. "A little graduation present for the whole family, I was the financing. Lily, predictably, was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious to the world beyond her screen. "I know, right?" she gushed, loud enough for me to hear. "Mom and Dad are finally getting me a BMW. I mean, it's a used one, but still, it's a BMW. Erica's graduation is totally paying off." She said it right in front of me, as if I were not a person but a recently matured bond, finally ready to be cashed in. I just picked up an apple and walked out. The graduation ceremony itself passed in a strange, muffled blur. I sat on a hard folding chair on the university lawn, a sea of violet caps and gowns around me. The speeches were long and full of platitudes about the future. Names were called. Eventually, I heard mine. Erica Vega, Bachelor of Science in Biology, summa cum laude. I walked across the stage. I shook a hand I did not recognize. I took the empty diploma cover. I scanned the crowd in the stands. My family was easy to spot. In the third row, Daniel, Valerie, and Lily were all clapping, but their applause was purely performative. Valerie was, of course, filming, but she was filming a wide shot of the crowd, capturing the ambiance rather than the moment. Then I saw him, way up, at the very top of the bleachers, sitting alone, was Uncle Marco. He was not clapping, he was just watching, holding his own phone up, the lens aimed directly at me. He saw me spot him, and he gave me a single, slow nod. It was not a celebratory gesture. It was a look of grim, profound pride. It was a look that said, "You made it this far. Kid, now comes the hard part." After the ceremony, we were herded onto the lawn for the requisite happy family photos. My face ached from the fake smiling. My father clapped me on the back, his hand too heavy. "Good job, kid. Good job." Valerie pulled me in close for a selfie. Her arm draped over my shoulder. Her pearls were cold against my neck, and her perfume was suffocating. "This is going to be a wonderful party, Erica," she whispered, her smile fixed for the camera, her eyes hard as glass. "Everyone is so excited for the big announcement." "Announcement?" I asked, keeping my voice light, my smile just as fixed as hers. Her fingers dug into the muscle of my shoulder, a sharp, warning pinch. "About the car," she hissed, her voice dropping. "Daniel is going to make a speech, and then you are going to present Lily with a symbolic key. We bought one. It's very cute. It will show everyone how generous and selfless you are, how much you love this family. It will be the perfect moment." She pulled back to look at me, her smile gone. "You understand me, don't you?" This was it, the public execution. They were going to trap me in front of 50 of their friends. They were going to leverage my lifetime of obedience and the pressure of a crowd to get what they wanted. I looked right back at her. The old, frightened Erica was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. The smile I gave her was all my own. "Don't worry, Mom," I said, my voice sweet and low. "I promise, this afternoon, everyone is going to finally understand the truth. You can count on it." Her eyes narrowed. The ambiguity of my response, the fact that I did not immediately stammer and agree, threw her. She could not read me anymore, and it terrified her. She let go of my shoulder, her smile tightening into a thin, angry line. "Good," she snapped. I saw Marco break away from the crowd. He was walking briskly toward the parking lot, his phone already to his ear. I knew who he was calling. He was calling Caroline Cole, my lawyer, to let her know the timeline. He was also heading to the house early. He had to set up the real presentation. He had the USB. He had the kitchen camera footage, the audio files, the screenshots, and he had a small, discreet HDMI mirroring device. The backyard, where the party was being held, contained my father's greatest pride and joy, a massive 75-inch outdoor smart television mounted on the brick wall of the patio. It was currently set to display a looping slideshow of family memories, which was just pictures of Lily and Valerie, with a few of my father's golf trophies thrown in. Marco was going to repurpose it. By 3 in the afternoon, The party was in full swing. I had to admit, Valerie knew how to create a facade. White balloons drifted in the breeze. A string quartet played classical music softly in the corner. Tables were piled high with expensive catering that I knew my trust fund had indirectly paid for. And hanging over the entire patio, flapping gently, was a massive vinyl banner. "Congratulations, Erica. We are so proud." The yard was filled with them. Our neighbors from Oak Creek, my father's golf partners, Valerie's PTA friends, and a few of my professors. Looking awkward in the opulent setting, they all swirled around me, champagne flutes in hand, offering congratulations, their faces masks of suburban politeness. "Erica, what a triumph. Your parents must be bursting with pride," said our neighbor, Mrs. Davies, who had once reported me to Valerie for not edging the lawn correctly. "I know," I said, my smile feeling brittle. "They've been very involved." "Daniel and Valerie are just the most dedicated parents," another guest chimed in, clasping my arm. "They've given you and Lily every opportunity in the world." My father was in his element, holding court by the grill, accepting compliments on my behalf as if he had been the one to write my thesis. Valerie was floating through the crowd, a gracious, smiling hostess, ensuring every glass was full, her white dress pristine. "So, Erica, what is next for you?" one of my biology professors asked, his voice kind. "Graduate school? A research position at the institute?" "I'm keeping my options open," I said, my standard, non-committal answer. "For the first time, I'm just going to be taking care of myself." Across the lawn, I saw Marco. He was standing near the back wall, his body casually obscuring the smart TV. He had a glass of water in his hand, but he was not drinking, he was watching. His eyes darted from me, to my father, to Valerie, and back to me. He was a sentinel. I could feel the energy of the party shifting. It had been going for about an hour. The polite murmur of conversation was dying down. I saw Valerie, across the yard, catch my father's eye. She gave him a short, sharp nod. I saw him check his watch. I saw Lily, who had been hovering near the patio doors, suddenly stand up straight, her face alight with a greedy, desperate anticipation. They were getting impatient. They wanted to get to the main event, the public sacrifice. Marco saw it, too. He set his water glass down on a nearby table. He casually slipped his right hand into his pocket, his gaze locking onto the television. He was ready. My father picked up a champagne flute and a silver spoon. He walked to the center of the patio, his shadow stretching long in the late afternoon sun. Ting, ting, ting. The sharp metallic sound cut through the murmur of the crowd. The string quartet faded out. Every eye, 50 pairs of them, turned to him. "Friends, neighbors, family," Daniel began, his voice booming with false pride, echoing slightly in the sudden silence. "If I could have your attention for just a moment. As you all know, we are here today to celebrate my brilliant daughter, Erica." He beamed at me, and the crowd applauded politely. I felt my blood run cold. "But today," he continued, his voice swelling, "is not just about her graduation. It's about family. It's about what we do for each other. And we have a very special, very significant family announcement to make. It's a wonderful gift, really. A gift that celebrates not only Erica's hard work, but also the bright future of our other daughter, Lily." This was it. The trap was sprung. From across the lawn, I saw Marco's thumb move on the phone in his hand. The slideshow of family memories on the giant television screen behind my father flickered, and then the screen went black. My father had not noticed. He was too busy soaking in the spotlight. He raised his glass, his smile wide and predatory. "Lily, honey," he called out, "why don't you come up here with me?" Lily, her face a mask of delighted, greedy expectation, practically skipped to my father's side. She stood there, preening, as he put his arm around her. "Family," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion, projecting to the back of the yard. "It is everything. It is the foundation we build our lives on. When Valerie and I built this family, we knew it would take sacrifice. We knew it would take work. He gestured vaguely toward me, still standing near the edge of the patio, my violet gown a dark stain against the bright, happy backdrop. "We took Erica in," he said, and my blood went cold. Took me in? I was his daughter. We raised her as our own, gave her every advantage, every opportunity. We taught her the value of hard work, of responsibility, of putting the family first. The crowd was nodding. Mrs. Davies was dabbing her eye. They were eating this up, the beautiful, generous family. "And now," Daniel continued, "Erica has graduated, a wonderful achievement, but more than that, she has come into a wonderful inheritance from her grandfather, a true blessing. Here it comes." My heart was a drum against my ribs. "And what does a blessing like that mean?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. "It means you share it. It means you use it to lift up the entire family." He squeezed Lily's shoulder, who beamed at him. Lily, as you all know, has a long, difficult, and expensive road ahead of her. Medical school is no joke. She needs every tool, every advantage we can give her, to succeed. He paused, letting the suspense build. He was a performer, and this was his stage. "So today," he declared, raising his glass high, "today, thanks to the generosity of her grandfather, and thanks to the wonderful, selfless, sacrificial spirit that we taught her, Erica is helping us make a down payment on the first of those tools. We are officially, as a family, getting Lily her first car, a BMW, to get her to those classes safely and reliably." The crowd erupted in applause. They were clapping for him, for Valerie, for Lily. They were clapping for this beautiful, fictional narrative of family generosity. Lily was bouncing on her toes, her eyes searching the crowd for a friend to share the look with. Valerie, standing near the front, turned to me. Her smile was a painted-on command. She gestured for me to come forward, a subtle flick of her fingers. "Erica, honey," she called out, her voice bright and brittle. "Come up here, say a few words. Congratulate your sister on her wonderful gift." The trap was set. The audience was primed. I was supposed to walk up, hand over my future, and smile while they applauded my sacrifice. I began to walk. My legs felt like they were moving through wet cement. Every eye was on me. The string quartet, tragically, started playing a soft, uplifting tune. I stepped onto the patio. I could smell my father's expensive cologne. I could see the self-satisfied, proprietary gleam in his eyes. I took a breath. My hands were shaking, so I clasped them in front of me. I looked at my father, at Valerie, at Lily, and then I turned to the 50 smiling, expectant faces of our friends and neighbors. "Thank you," I said. My voice was surprisingly clear, though it felt like it was coming from someone else. I do have a few things I want to say." My father's smile widened. He thought I was playing my part. "I am grateful for my grandfather," I said, my voice gaining strength. "He was a wonderful man, and he left me a trust fund. He left it to me." I let the words hang in the air. The applause, which had been simmering, died. A few people looked confused. "It's a wonderful gift," I continued, "and he was very specific about its purpose. He wanted it to pay for my education and to help me start my own life, which is what I intend to do." The silence was total now. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. People had frozen, wine glasses halfway to their mouths. They were looking at my father, at Valerie, waiting for the punchline. "Which is why," I said, my voice clear and final, "I need to correct a misunderstanding. The trust is my own. It is not a family fund. There are no provisions in it for a car for Lily, and I will not be using it to buy one. The attempt to have me sign a power of attorney to transfer that control was not legal." A collective, sharp intake of breath. Mrs. Davies's hand flew to her pearls. My professor, Dr. Allister, leaned forward, his academic curiosity suddenly replaced by a look of sharp, clinical interest. Lily's face, which had been a portrait of triumph, crumpled. "What?" she stammered, her voice a high-pitched squeak. "Erica, what are you talking about? Stop being weird. This isn't funny." She tried to laugh, a desperate hiccuping sound. "You're kidding, right?" I turned to look directly at her. "No, Lily," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the dead silence. "I'm not kidding. I'm not paying for your car." Valerie moved so fast I barely saw her. 1 second she was by the canapes, the next she was at my side, her hand clamping onto my upper arm like a steel trap. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin through the thin fabric of my dress, hidden by the folds of the violet gown. "You are embarrassing me," she whispered, her voice a low, venomous hiss, her teeth clenched behind her painted smile. "You are embarrassing this entire family. Stop this, right now. You walk back what you just said. You tell them you were confused. You fix this." "I'm not confused," I said, just as quietly. But I did not look at her. I looked at the crowd. "For years, I have been—" "Shut your mouth," she hissed, her grip tightening, a brutal, twisting pinch. "You ungrateful little—" But it was Daniel who broke. His face, which had been frozen in a rictus of disbelief, contorted. The blood rushed to it, turning his skin a dark, mottled purple. The image of the benevolent patriarch shattered, replaced by the face of a bully who had just had his favorite toy taken away. "You owe me," he snarled. The word was not a shout, but a low, guttural sound that ripped out of his chest. "You owe me everything. You live in my house. You ate my food. I gave you this life. And you stand here, in front of my friends, and you call me a liar? You ungrateful—" He was right in front of me now. I could smell the champagne on his breath. "How dare you!" he roared, and this time it was a shout. And he raised his hand. It happened in the fractured, terrible slow motion of a car crash. I saw the hand coming. I saw the gold signet ring on his pinky finger. I saw the shock on the faces in the front row. I saw Valerie, for a split second, let go of my arm, not to stop him, but to get out of the way. His open palm connected with the side of my face with a sound that was not like a movie. It was a wet, sharp, sickening crack. The force of it snapped my head to the side. My vision exploded in a burst of white, blinding static. The ringing in my ears was so loud it drowned out the string quartet. The party, everything. I staggered backward, my heel catching on the hem of my own gown. I tasted it instantly, the hot, sharp, metallic tang of blood in my mouth. The silence that followed the slap was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was absolute. It was a vacuum. Then came the gasp. It was not one gasp, but 50, a chorus of horrified, sudden sound. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Daniel, did he just—" I raised a trembling hand to my face. My cheek was on fire. A deep, pounding ache that was already spreading to my ear and down my jaw. When I pulled my fingers away, they were smeared with red. I had bitten the inside of my cheek. I looked up. The world was blurry, but the faces were clear. Every single guest was staring. They were staring at my father, whose hand was still raised, his chest heaving. They were staring at my bleeding lip. They were staring at Valerie. And Valerie was not shocked. She was not horrified. She was furious. She surged forward again and grabbed my other arm, the one she had not already bruised. She dug her nails in, her face close to mine. "You see what you did?" she spat, her voice a low, reptilian hiss. "You little bitch. You deserve that. You will regret this. You will regret not signing." She was not helping me. She was blaming me. She was threatening me. I was 22 years old. I was a college graduate. I was standing in my own backyard, at my own graduation party, in front of 50 people, and my father had just assaulted me while my stepmother held me in place. I looked at the crowd, at the circle of shocked, pale faces. They were not looking away. They were not pretending it did not happen. They saw. They all saw. The violence was not hidden behind the kitchen door this time. It was out here, in the bright, unforgiving sunshine, on their stage. My father's face was still a mask of pure, uncontrolled rage. He saw me looking at the crowd, saw their judgment, and it only made him angrier. He started to lunge again, his hand balling into a fist. "You want to embarrass me?" he bellowed. "I'll give you something to—" He took a step. "Enough." The voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a razor. It was hard, cold, and absolute. Every head turned. Uncle Marco had stepped out from the shadows of the back wall. He was no longer a guest. He was a cop again. He walked onto the patio, his body language calm, controlled, and utterly dangerous. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at me. He looked at my father. He stepped directly between us, forcing Daniel to stop. He stood less than a foot from my father, a solid, immovable object. And in his right hand, held up high for everyone to see, was his phone. Marco stood there, a solid, unmoving wall between me and my father. His phone was held high, the screen bright. My father, his fist still clenched, froze. He was confused. "What the hell are you doing, Marco?" Daniel snarled. "Get out of my way." "I don't think so, Danny," Marco said, his voice dangerously calm. He never called him Danny. With his thumb, Marco tapped a single button on his phone's screen. Behind my father, the massive 75-inch smart television, which had been black for the last 30 seconds, flickered to life. The guests, who had been staring at the scene on the patio, were drawn to the sudden light. But it was not the looping slideshow of Lily's childhood photos. The screen was filled with a familiar image. Our kitchen. The view was from the paper towel holder. The timestamp in the corner read, "Yesterday." And there, standing in the center of the frame, were my father, Valerie, and me. The video was silent for a second, just motion activated. Then the audio kicked in, crisp and clear, amplified by the expensive outdoor speakers my father had installed. The entire party heard my father's voice, not the booming, proud voice from the speech, but a low, menacing growl. "You are not leaving this room until you sign those papers, Erica. Do you understand me?" On the screen, the party guests watched as the video version of Valerie, her face a mask of cold fury, stepped close to the camera, close to me. Her voice, sharp and precise, filled the backyard. "Let's be very, very clear. That trust, that is this family's money. It is not your money. It is a resource. Lily needs that car. Lily needs her tuition. You are just the vessel. You are the method of delivery." A sound rippled through the crowd, a horrified, collective murmur. Mrs. Davies, who had been weeping at Daniel's sacrifice speech, made a small, strangled noise, her hand covering her mouth. My father's golf partners looked sick. They were staring at the screen, then at the real Daniel, then back at the screen, their faces pale with disgust. The perfect image, the one Daniel and Valerie had spent over a decade cultivating, the image of the loving, selfless, successful Oak Creek parents, was being systematically, brutally incinerated in high definition. On the screen, the video Daniel spoke again. "If you do not sign, you are no longer my daughter. You will be out on the street. Do you hear me? You will have nothing." "What is this?" Valerie shrieked, her voice cracking. She finally understood what was happening. That's fake. That's not real." "It's real," Marco said, his voice flat. He tapped his phone screen again. The video changed. Now it was just audio. The screen was black, but Valerie's voice, recorded from the digital device in my pocket just days before, filled the air. "Incredibly disappointed in your selfish behavior. If you will not sign those papers to help this family, you should not expect this family to have a place for you. You are making a terrible, terrible mistake." The text message I had saved, the one she sent me, flashed on the screen, the words stark white against the black. "You are making a terrible, terrible mistake. Lily, who had been frozen in horror, finally broke. "Make it stop!" she screamed, covering her ears. "Mom, Dad, make him stop. He can't show this. You can't show this." Marco looked at her, his eyes cold. "For the first time in your life, Lily," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the yard. "Everyone is seeing the real Daniel Vega family." That broke my father. The humiliation, the public exposure. It was too much. His rage, which had been focused on me, transferred to Marco. "You bastard!" Daniel roared, and he lunged. He did not lunge for me this time. He lunged for the phone in Marco's hand. He was going to destroy the evidence. It was a clumsy, telegraphed move, fueled by panic and champagne. Marco, the ex-cop, did not even flinch. He pivoted on his heel. A clean, economic motion, letting Daniel's momentum carry him past. My father stumbled, catching himself on a patio chair, which clattered to the ground. And in that single, fluid movement, Marco's thumb, which had been controlling the television, moved to a different icon on his screen. I knew what it was. It was the send button on a pre-addressed email. An email containing the entire package, every video file, every audio recording, every screenshot, the copy of the coerced power of attorney document. One copy was going to Caroline Cole, my lawyer. The other was going to a private email address Marco kept, one that he had told me forwarded directly to the duty sergeant at the Maple Ridge Sheriff's Department. The evidence was off the phone. It was in the cloud. It was already delivered. And then, a new voice cut through the chaos, a woman's voice, sharp and clear, from the back of the crowd. "Yes, operator, I'm at 1422 Willow Creek Drive," said Mrs. Davies, our neighbor, her voice shaking but furious. She was holding her own cell phone to her ear. "I am witnessing an active case of family violence. A father just assaulted his daughter. Yes, she's bleeding. And now they're showing evidence. It's about financial coercion. They're trying to steal a trust fund from her. Please, you need to send someone, now." My father, who had straightened up, ready to lunge at Marco again, froze. His bloodshot eyes snapped to Mrs. Davies. The words operator and assaulted and sheriff had finally penetrated his rage. I was still standing where he had hit me, my hand pressed to my throbbing cheek. The blood from my lip was dripping onto the collar of my gown. I stood behind Marco's solid, protective back, and I looked out at the sea of faces. They were not just shocked anymore, they were angry. Two of Valerie's PTA friends, women I had served appetizers to for a decade, broke from the crowd. They walked past Valerie, who stood frozen by the patio table, her face a mask of gray horror. They came to me. "Erica. Honey." One of them, a woman named Sharon, said, her voice trembling. She gently took my arm. "Come away from them. Come with us." The other woman, Mary, was already digging in her purse for napkins, pressing them into my hand for my lip. "We saw it, dear," Mary whispered, her eyes full of a new, horrified understanding. "We saw everything. We had no idea. We will be your witnesses. That woman, that monster. We had no idea." I was not alone. For the first time in my entire life, standing in the ruins of my family's reputation, I was not alone. Valerie saw her friends, her social circle, her allies, physically move to my side, forming a protective barrier. She saw her entire world, the one she had built on a foundation of lies and brunches, crumble in on itself. She snapped. "This is a private matter," she shrieked, her voice a shrill, desperate sound. "You have no right. This is family. He's lying." She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at Marco. "It's a setup. He's ganging up on us. Erica is unstable. She's lying. Daniel he was overwrought. It's a misunderstanding." But no one was listening. No one was buying the "it's a private family matter" defense. Not after they had seen my father's hand connect with my face, not after they had heard Valerie call me a vessel for their money. And then we all heard it. Faintly, in the distance, but growing closer every second. The high, tearing, unmistakable wail of a siren. Mrs. Davies's call had been taken very, very seriously. They were coming. Daniel heard it, the last of the fight, the last of the rage, drained out of him, replaced by a sick, primitive panic. His eyes went wide. He looked at the gate, at the front of the house. He was calculating. He, Daniel Vega, the successful executive, the pillar of the community, was about to be a perp walk on his own manicured lawn. The image, the facade, was everything, and it was gone. He started to back away, his hands held up as if in surrender. "Val," he stammered. "Valerie, we have to." I watched him panic. I watched Valerie stare at the approaching squad car's lights, which were now flashing against the trees on our street. I looked at Marco, who had put his phone away and was just watching them, his face a cold mask of judgment. My legs, which had held me up through the speech, through the slap, through the reveal, suddenly felt like water. The adrenaline that had been a steel rod in my spine dissolved, leaving me empty. My vision started to swim. The throbbing in my cheek was a universe of pain. I looked at the guests, at my former neighbors, who were now just a collection of horrified strangers. "At least," I whispered, the words thick on my swollen lip, "at least you all saw." I tried to take a step toward Sharon, toward the gate, toward away, but the world tilted. The bright green of the lawn rushed up to meet me. The last thing I heard before the blackness took me was the sound of my name being shouted, and the screech of tires as the first patrol car pulled up to the curb. My body, which had held on for so long, had finally given me permission to check out. The show was over. The truth was out. And as I fell, I knew, with a dizzy, sharp clarity, that I had won. Waking up in a hospital room was a disorienting, antiseptic experience. The first thing I saw was not a concerned relative, but the calm, steady face of my Uncle Marco, sitting in a plastic chair by the window. The second thing I saw was my lawyer, Caroline Cole, standing at the foot of the bed, holding a briefcase. "You're okay, kid," Marco said, his voice rough. "Minor concussion, fractured cheekbone, and a split lip. They're keeping you for observation for a few hours." Caroline stepped forward. "Erica," she said, her voice formal but kind. "The police have already taken statements from over a dozen witnesses at the party. Your father and stepmother were arrested last night. Daniel was charged with assault and battery. Valerie was charged with assault and coercion. They posted bail, but the process has begun." The next few weeks were a blur of legal strategy. I moved out of that house immediately. Of course, Caroline activated the hardship and duress clause my grandfather had so wisely included. Within 24 hours, I had the funds for a security deposit and 3 months' rent on a clean, safe, one-bedroom apartment near the university, in a building with a doorman. I spent my days not celebrating my graduation, but sitting in offices. I sat with the detectives at the Maple Ridge Sheriff's Department, handing over the encrypted USB drive. I sat with Caroline, planning our civil case. I sat with a prosecutor from the district attorney's office, who looked at the kitchen video, listened to the audio of Valerie's threats, and told me he had a rock-solid case for criminal charges. The videos Marco had collected, and the one he had broadcast, were the entire case. They were irrefutable. The hearing was set for 6 weeks after the graduation party. It was a combined hearing, our petition for a permanent civil restraining order and a preliminary hearing for the criminal charges of assault and financial coercion. The courtroom was small, beige, and smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a place of mundane, bureaucratic justice. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Caroline and Marco, and across the aisle, at the defendant's table, sat Daniel and Valerie. The transformation was shocking. They were not the golden, powerful couple from Oak Creek Estates. They were small. They were gray. Valerie's perfect blonde hair was dull, and she wore a shapeless gray suit, a desperate attempt to look matronly and harmless. Daniel's face was sallow, his expensive suit hanging on him as if it were 2 sizes too big. Their masks were not just cracked, they were gone. They looked like what they were: petty, aging, and afraid. In the public gallery, 3 rows back, sat Lily. She was alone, her face pale, and for the first time in her life, she looked lost. She pointedly avoided looking at me. The judge, a woman named Maria Fernandez, with sharp eyes and zero patience, called the room to order. Caroline Cole was first. She was not a dramatic lawyer. She was a surgeon. She laid out the case with cold, factual precision. She started with my childhood, painting a picture of a minor child groomed for a role of servitude. She detailed the years of emotional and financial abuse, the stolen wages, the sabotaged college applications. "This was not parenting, Your Honor," Caroline stated, her voice resonating in the quiet room. "This was a long-form campaign of coercive control, designed to keep the victim, Erica Vega, dependent and subservient." Then she moved to the trust. She submitted the power of attorney document Daniel had tried to force me to sign. "This, Your Honor, is not a financial instrument. It is a demand for unconditional surrender. It is an attempt at felony theft, plain and simple." And finally, she moved to the party. When Miss Vega, a legal adult, asserted her right to her own property, the defendant's campaign of coercion escalated, predictably, to public violence. The defense attorney, a slick man named Harrison, tried to object. "Your Honor, this is a gross mischaracterization of a private family dispute that simply got out of hand." "A family dispute?" Caroline repeated, her voice dripping with ice. "Let's see the dispute," she nodded to the clerk. "I would like to play the first piece of evidence." The lights in the courtroom dimmed slightly. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and there, for the judge and the entire court to see, was our kitchen. "That is this family's money." Valerie's voice, cold and clear, filled the courtroom. "It is not your money. You are just the vessel." I watched the judge's face. Her expression did not change, but her knuckles, holding her pen, turned white. She watched the video of my father telling me I was no longer his daughter. She heard Valerie threaten to kick me out. "And now, evidence item 2, Caroline said, filmed by multiple witnesses at the party. This footage was shakier, taken on a cell phone by one of the guests, but it was unmistakable. It showed my father, his face purple with rage. It showed him screaming, "You ungrateful! How dare you!" And it showed the slap. The crack of his hand against my face echoed in the silent courtroom. It was brutal. It was undeniable. The video continued, showing Valerie grabbing my arm, hissing at me. "You deserve that. You will regret this." The judge, who had seen everything, finally turned to the defense attorney. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You were saying something about a misunderstanding?" Mr. Harrison looked like he had swallowed poison. Caroline was not finished. She called her witnesses. Mrs. Davies, our neighbor, took the stand. She described the perfect family facade, and then she described the monstrous reality she saw at the party. "He hit her," Mrs. Davies said, her voice shaking with anger. "He hit that poor girl for saying no, and that woman, her stepmother, she held her for him. It was the most despicable thing I have ever witnessed." Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand. I did not look at them. I looked at the judge. "Miss Vega," Caroline began, "can you please describe your relationship with the defendants?" I took a breath. I gave the speech I had practiced in my head, in my new apartment, for weeks. It was not emotional. It was a summary of facts. I spoke about being the invisible support column for their family. I spoke about the years of stolen wages, the destroyed opportunities. I spoke about finding out about the trust and the immediate, overwhelming pressure. They did not ask me, I said, my voice clear and strong. They told me. They told me my grandfather's gift was not mine. They told me my only value was what I could provide for them. And when I finally said no, my father hit me. The defense attorney tried to cross-examine me. Miss Vega, you were angry, weren't you? You wanted to embarrass them, to hurt them. No, I said, meeting his eyes. I just wanted to be free. They were the ones who were embarrassed by the truth. He had nothing else. I stepped down. The prosecution rests, Your Honor, Caroline said. The judge looked at the defense. Mr. Harrison, do you have anything at all to offer? Harrison stood, shuffling his papers. Your Honor, my clients, they made a mistake. They were under stress. It was a terrible, regrettable, one-time incident. One time? A new voice, Marco. He was standing up from his seat behind me. Your Honor, he said, I have one final piece of evidence. With the court's permission? The judge, intrigued, nodded. Proceed. Marco did not play a video from his phone. He handed a USB drive to the clerk. This is a video, Your Honor. It was filmed in the offices of Horizon and Cole 2 years ago. It was an addendum, a personal message from the testator, Miguel Vega. My heart stopped. I had no idea this existed. The screen lit up again, and my breath caught in my throat. It was my grandfather, Miguel. He looked older, sicker than I remembered, but his eyes were the same, sharp and kind. He was sitting in Caroline Cole's office. He looked directly into the camera, as if he were looking at me. This is a message for my granddaughter, Erica, he said, his voice a low, familiar rumble. Erica, my girl, I'm leaving you this money for one reason, not for school, not for a car. I'm leaving it for you, so you can be strong, so you can be free. He leaned closer to the camera. I'm not stupid. I've seen how they are. I've seen your father, and I've seen that woman. They will try to take this from you. They will tell you it's for the family. They will tell you that you are selfish. His voice cracked, just once. You are not selfish. You are a survivor. This money is your escape. It is for you to leave any situation that is unsafe, any person who tries to dim your light, and I want this on the record, any person, family or not, who tries to coerce, threaten, or force you to give up this money. I consider that a betrayal of you, and a betrayal of me. He finished. Be free, Erica, live your life. The video ended. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I was crying. Silent tears tracing the new, faint scar on my cheek. Caroline Cole had her hand on my arm. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. The judge took a long time. She took off her glasses. She cleaned them, slowly. When she put them back on, her eyes were like steel. She looked at Daniel and Valerie. I have been on this bench for 15 years, she said, her voice shaking with a controlled, cold fury. I have seen a lot of ugly things, but what I have seen today, in this court, the calculated, long-term, financial and emotional destruction of a child for personal profit, is an abomination. She did not mince words. The ruling was swift and brutal. A permanent, 5-year restraining order is granted. Daniel and Valerie Vega will not come within 500 yards of Erica Vega, her home, her school, or her place of work. You will not contact her by phone, email, text, or third party. Any violation of this will result in your immediate arrest. Valerie let out a small, strangled sob. Furthermore, the criminal charges of assault and coercion are hereby referred to the grand jury. This court finds sufficient, overwhelming evidence for a full felony trial. The district attorney will be in touch. Daniel's head sank, his hands covering his face. Furthermore, this court affirms that the trust of Miguel Vega is the sole and exclusive property of Erica Vega. Any and all attempts to gain access, including the fraudulent power of attorney document, are declared null and void, having been procured under extreme duress and coercion. She looked at Lily, in the back. A note to the family. This court will not be an instrument in the financial sacrifice of one child for the benefit of another. This family-first narrative was nothing but a criminal conspiracy. She banged her gavel. We are done here. We walked out of the courthouse, me, Marco, and Caroline, into the bright, blinding sunlight. A local news reporter, who must have gotten a tip, rushed up, a microphone in her hand. Erica Vega, are you satisfied with the verdict? Do you have any regrets about taking your own family to court? I stopped. I was tired. I was sore, but I was standing tall. I looked at the camera. I didn't bring my family to court, I said, my voice steady. I just brought the truth to a place where it could be heard. A family that demands a child be a sacrifice. That family brought itself here. We walked away. That night, I sat in my new apartment. It was small. It was not gray. I had painted the walls a soft, warm yellow. On my new, second-hand kitchen table, my cell phone sat. It was not a listening device. It was not a tool for my abusers. It was just a phone, a tool for me. I opened my laptop, and I started to write. I started to tell my story, from the beginning. My stepmother hit me at my graduation. My father called me a disgrace, but my uncle, he raised his phone, and from that one, single moment, they finally stopped being the narrators of my life. I am, from here on out. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad I could share it with you all. I really want to know what you think, so please, comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I would love to connect. Please make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this and stories like it.